Welcome back to Bridge the Gap. It's been a hot minute since I've actually said that. But we have with us the interesting MC Till. I say interesting because he does a whole bunch of stuff, which makes a person interesting to me. Like he's an author, he's an artist, beat maker, reviewer. I mean, the level of knowledge I've seen this guy display in terms of his understanding of hip hop, etc., is pretty high in the list of things. So he's overall a pretty schooled individual. Plus, he comes from a whole part of town that, if you're from Montreal, sounds like the middle of nowhere, but possibly isn't, being Cincinnati and all of that part of the world, which feels like it's the middle of nowhere, but I'm sure it's a valid ass city. I'm not gonna lie. But like, so with that, it's a whole different experience. So like the show's Bridge the Gap because we like to bridge the gap between different places and peoples and share the experiences and try to learn as many knowledge nuggets from your journey as we possibly can. So with that, I don't know if I like missed anything, but can you just take a quick second to introduce yourself a little bit, and then most importantly, tell us where you started your life, because that's going to be relevant to how we start this off, like the earliest parts of where you start your life.
Yes, excellent. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that wonderful intro. You took care of my story already. I'm from Evansville, Indiana. Originally, I'm in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is my new home now. I've been here like 20 years. And really got it into hip hop at a very, very young age. Watching my brother. My brother was rapping with his friends and stuff, and like he's older than me, so I wanted to be like Big Brother. And that was like mid '80s. Yeah, just got into it, and it just stuck. Like I was mesmerized by the music.
Go into it
all that.
A little bit more details. So like, to get the ball rolling properly, we have our typical opening question we like to ask everybody. And so what really matters is that you're in a place near Cincinnati that probably most people might not be that familiar with. But you're in that. Cincinnati looks like it's next to 7 states or something, so it looks like it's real central when I looked at it on Google Maps.
Yeah, no doubt. It's right by Kentucky and Indiana and Ohio. Like we're all right there together.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So like, anyway, the opening question's a bit of a story. And when it lands, you can kind of go with it at that point. It all starts off with my girlfriend, and she's washing the dishes one time, and she's got her phone out, and she's playing the Black Eyed Peas, and she's got that song, I Got a Feeling. I got a feeling.
Oh, yeah.
She's vibing, she's dancing, she's having this moment, and I look at her and go, when in the fuck did this song become chores music? Because if you think about this track and run it back to like 2010, it really is this middle of the night anthem where everybody's celebrating, having this wonderful time. Even the kids was celebrating in this song. It was a global phenomenon. All this time passes. The song doesn't change at all because it's a song. But we recontextualize our relationship with the song as we get older, that it goes from being, celebration times to when we're doing some boring stuff like working out or chores or whatever else, and we try to celebrate in our minds again. And it was just this big phenomenon for me. I was like, man, this whole journey that everybody goes on with the music, and like, I'm thinking about the 20-year-olds with the drills and the getting sturdies and whatnot. They don't even know that when they're older, they're going to be getting sturdy to the dishes, and that's just going to be the future trajectory for them. And that a lot of us older cats, when we hear what they're into, straight to dishes music. We just skip all the parts in the middle and whatnot. And it made me think about how, like, when you hear about the stories of artists and the journeys, everybody kind of seems to start it at the same point. They always seem to focus on like when they first discover hip hop, or when they start rapping, or when usually it's about adolescence or whatever. It's a little different for everyone, but it's like when they get their own identity with it. But the part for me is that when it comes to our own musical journeys, it starts like way before anybody usually first heard hip. There are exceptions, but most people don't usually start off with hip hop. Usually, like, you pop out in a hospital, there's a song being played in a room, and it starts there. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually like there's so much impact to it. Like I can remember being 5 years old in the apartment in Montreal. My dad's got these gray boxes all over, the amp, the preamp, the tape deck, the radio, and be busting Led Zeppelins and things like that in the daytimes, and at night times it would be all this club music straight from the clubs in Montreal. And my mom's, it was more like discos and musicals and Disney movies and that kind of vibes and sounds. And it was just like this mishmash of things that greatly influenced me to this day, but I had no control over listening to any of it. So I was hoping, MC Till, you could bring us back to the youngest version of MC Till you could remember being, and tell us what it sounded like to be you before you had any control over the music, keeping in mind that most of us did not come from where you come from.
Yeah, man, it's a great question, man. Hip hop was such an early thing for me. There was moments before that, but I was very young. I do remember my grandpa was he was a big jazz head. He loved jazz music, and I do remember him. And I actually have his old record player right next to me. I remember him playing jazz records on this like Zenith, however you say it, record player when I was really, really young at his house, at grandma and grandpa's house. That might be my earliest musical memory. My mom wasn't really all that into music, and my dad was not really into music much at all. My mom was a little bit more. So I think my first memory of just like a tune came from seeing my grandpa listening to jazz. Yeah.
And then, like, as you got into it, when did, like, your brother, like, be having an older brother, when did he start to get into music? Or, like, how much older than you is he?
Yeah, so he's 3 years older than me. So he must have been, I don't know, 9, 10, maybe. I'm like 6, 7. And I remember he wasn't really into it, like, where he was, like, learning instruments and stuff like that. He kind of got into it a little bit more later on, but it was kind of like a passing fad where we were, like, in the Midwest in the States. And, like, it was just kind of a fun thing for him and his friends to do. Like, they were rapping and listening to rap music and whatnot. And so I just saw that and was like, oh, that's cool. I want to be like that, and I want to follow that,
And so they were rapping at like 9 years old?
Yeah, they were they were pretty young. I mean, it wasn't like they were, forming rap groups and stuff like that, like just little fun, silly stuff. I think they had like, it's a vague memory, and I don't know, how like memories change over time. You read into them what wasn't really there, but the memory I have was my brother and his friends were like rapping. They had some sort of assignment at school, so they made up this little rap. It probably wasn't even a song, just probably like a few verses, and they were rapping these verses. And I remember that. And then I remember my brother and I finding the college radio station that played hip hop, I believe, one night a week for a few hours. And I remember finding that, and like there was one radio, I think at the time, maybe two, but 1 or 2 radios in the house. And I remember like turning on the radio to 91.5. Still remember that. And, listening to Party Lights when they played hip hop music. And that had a pretty profound effect on me. Just hearing the music,
So you guys had like a local, was it like pop, hip hop, or like what? Because this is the 80s, you said? Like,
yeah,
this was pretty early on.
This was probably late 80s for the radio station, maybe early 90s. So this was more like what I remember was like Markie, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, stuff like that. So this was, it wasn't hip hop then, it wasn't really pop and underground. It was just hip hop, everything was just hip hop. And it was so dope to me. I was like, man, what is this music? I love this music. And my brother kind of phased out of it, and he still listened to like Tribe Called Quest and stuff, but for the most part, he got into other music. And for me, for whatever reason, and this is a weird thing, like, I don't know why it stuck with me. Like, there was something about the music from a very young age. Like, it stuck until like, I'm still like going online, reading about it. And so all these years, it's just something about it that has captured me and continues to capture me.
And like, is hip hop a big part of life in like that part of, I don't know if you're in Cincinnati at that point or the new.
Yeah,
I forgot the name of the other place.
That's okay. It's all good. It's Evansville, Indiana.
Evansville.
So it's pretty small. Evansville, yeah.
Evansville.
Yeah. Indiana. So no, hip hop wasn't a big part of life there. It was, like I said, it was more of like a passing fad. It was like becoming cool to like rap music at that time, and that was kind of the height of it. Yeah.
So it was more like, so outside of the radio, there wasn't like a lot of exposure to the culture. It was more like if there were the few people who had it, were you part of like that group of mixtaper folks who would tape stuff off the radio? Or like as you got a little bit older, how did you indulge your habit?
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely would record when we, moved up in the world and got a radio player that we could record off the radio. That was a big deal. We would I would record the songs, make tapes, definitely. And then my brother, I think it was my older brother. So my brother that's 3 years older than me, he was the one that got into it. But then I have an older brother, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't remember this, but I'm pretty sure he bought me my first tape, and it was a Markie, the Diabolical Biz Never Sleeps, a Markie tape, and he bought that for me. And that's it, man. I just started buying tapes. Like if I had any money, like holiday money or Christmas money or whatever, I'd beg my mom to buy me tapes, and just started buying lots of hip hop tapes, and then at that point it was just music. So like if I could buy a tape, I would buy a tape. If my brother's friend, my brother had this one friend specifically that throughout all the years, he stayed into hip hop pretty heavy, and he would dub me tapes all the time. And I'd always ask him like, what'd you get? And he'd tell me, and then he'd dub me a tape of it. And so, so at that point, it wasn't really like internet wasn't around, magazines. I wasn't in the magazines yet. It wasn't old enough. And so at that point, it was just like getting my hands on as many tapes as possible.
And like you're kind of close to New York, but you're not like that close to New York.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not getting the same like trickle down where like maybe a Jersey might get a little bit of love.
Yeah, no, not at all. So like our thing was like you had to go, to the mall or to like the record stores that were popping up at that time, and just buy tapes. And I don't even think CDs weren't even an option at that point. Maybe elsewhere. I can't remember exactly when CDs hit the scene, but I don't remember CDs early on in my, when I got into it.
I don't remember it. I do this with a lot of people. Nobody's really talking about CDs in the early 90s except for maybe some of the rich folks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was more mid-90s. That was like 90. Yeah. I remember 96 especially. I remember a lot of CDs in 96.
So like outside of music, when you're still like young, what else did you get up to as a kid? Was it like, were you drawing? Was there sports? Like what are some of the other things that you did?
Yeah, basketball. Basketball was a huge thing. I tried like pretty much all sports. I tried baseball, soccer, football, even cross country, track and field. So I tried a little bit of everything because I came from a pretty athletic family. But basketball is what stuck. My dad was a high school basketball coach for my entire childhood, and so my brothers played, and like we were just a basketball family, so it was just very natural. So I was always playing basketball, and then you just riding bikes in the neighborhood, hanging out with friends, stuff like that, like most kids, growing up. Yeah.
I mean, fair. Wait, is it like a city, or is it like one of those cities where you're like your backyard is the wilderness?
Yeah, nah, it wasn't like that. Evansville it's a city. I mean, it's a smaller city, but it definitely, I mean, it's houses, no like barns and chickens and farms and stuff. I mean, I guess on the outskirts there was, but it was definitely
in one of those small towns this weekend, and I'm like, man, they can get real small. Like there's still the city parts, but then there's the parts that are less city.
Yeah, I guess there were definitely parts like that, but like where I grew up, it was definitely like more of a city feel. I mean, small city feel, but still, still a city feel.
So like, when you're like young like that, did you have desires to like be a singer or to make your own music, or at this point are you just like a fan of it all?
Yeah, pretty early on, I was wanting to rap, and I remember I was maybe, I don't know, fourth grade maybe, and there was a yard sale across the street, and they had this old beat up drum kit, and it was like $20 or something. And so I bet my brother and I, or maybe it was just me, I don't remember, but we begged my mom, buy us this drum set, please. And we got that. And then from there, it was just like nonstop, got my hand on a drum machine at some point, started writing a lot of lyrics, started just rapping over like instrumentals I could find. And so pretty young, at a pretty young age, I wanted to rap.
Drums and a drum machine.
Yeah, I don't remember when the drum machine came. I had a multi. I remember I got a multi track recorder. And so with that, I would like try to make beats. So I would like drum a beat and like
Like with the
make the
actual
drum
drum set.
sounds. Yeah, with the actual drum set, I like do like a drum track, and then I would try to find some sort of sample or something. I was just always experimenting with stuff. And when I got a beat machine, I think that was maybe more in high school, or maybe even post high school, maybe senior year in high school. That was incredible because
But
like
hold on. So you
yeah,
started like actually drumming your beats, like with a drum
yeah,
set. That's
with the
hard.
drum set. And then before that though, you might been heard about pause tapes, or maybe you've done pause tapes before
No, I know
where
what they are, but we can
yeah.
explain it for anybody that doesn't know what they are.
So my understanding of them, what I did is, you have a part of like a song where, the rapper stops rapping or whatever, and there's just a little bit of beat at the end maybe. And so you basically you're manually looping it. And so you take that part and you record it onto another tape, then you pause it, and then you rewind it, play it, and then undo the pause button when that part comes, then you pause it again. So you're trying to extend that break so then you can rap over it. So I did that first and stuff like that. And then, yeah, when I got the drum set, I would do these, drum loops or whatever. I wasn't very good either, though. And that's why I love drum machines, because like I never really got into drumming to where I felt like I was really good at it, So it was pretty terrible, to be honest with you.
Nah, but you still did it. Like there's an intimacy with that because we was
Yeah.
just commenting on how tight your drums is today, right?
Oh,
So
thank
think
you.
about
Yeah,
that,
thank you.
right? The correlation between the intimacy of actually smashing drums as a young one maybe
Yeah.
gave you a little more insight in the future on what to do with your drums.
Yeah, totally. And I like the thing that I always reflect on is like I just never stopped. No matter what I had, whether it was a pause tape, an old beat up drum kit, or I even got a newer drum kit as I took some lessons and try to learn better, or when I got the drum machine, or whatever the case is, like whatever I had at my fingertips is what I used.
Mm.
And like never stopping at something, you either just don't know how to practice right and you never get better, or you figure out how to practice right and you get better and better and better. And hopefully I'm of the latter is what I'm hoping, because I mean, I've spent a lot of time on drums and samples and loops and all that, so hopefully my music
Nah,
is
your
getting
beats
better.
was nice. I
But
mean,
thank you, man.
when I heard of that project you did there, where I was consciously paying attention, because sometimes I don't really be paying attention. Like if you're
Yeah,
rapping,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm not focusing as much on the beats. I'm not even gonna
Sure,
lie,
sure, yeah.
just because like shit, he's rapping. That's what I gotta pay attention to. But then
Yeah,
like
no, I feel you.
now when I was listening to the beats, I'm like, nah, there's some pockets and grooves. Like I feel like the experience has absolutely paid off, especially as what you're doing is becoming way more prominent in pop again. Like it's almost like
Yeah.
at least for the older side of hip hop, it's very pop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that there's so much hip hop now that's like beat break beat driven, sample driven. I love that sound, and love to see artists doing it. And there's some really dope music out there using that, that style.
So yeah, so you start playing with the drums and doing all of the kind of home production throughout your school process, and you're playing basketball, I assume too. But like,
Yeah.
are you rapping at this point? Are you recording your own vocals, or is it mostly just beat making?
Yeah. So somewhere in high school, so in high school I was rapping, I was recording it on these like terrible, multi-track recorders, and it sounded awful. And then somewhere in high school, maybe my junior year, I met a guy that was just like this genius, and he made computers, and this was like 90, 98, 99. Just a really smart dude, and he knew how to record. I think he might have got me my first beat machine. I think I maybe bought it off of him. But anyway, and so he was able to record. So I think he was the one that recorded like my first, legitimate recording. It was still awful, but at least it sounded semi-professional. And then I think I bought a computer off him. He made me a computer. So I bought a computer off him. Um, and then I got the software to use to actually record myself. And then from that point, it was mainly me, recording. So I wasn't going to studios and stuff like that because I had access to it, in my own home. And when I went to college, I studied broadcast communications and broadcast journalism. And I learned some recording techniques for broadcasting that I just kind of use for recording my own, music. And so that was very helpful. And so, yeah, so kind of towards the end of my high school career into
Right.
college is when I really started like recording and getting better at the recording process.
But mostly it was like the production side because you had access to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Up to that point, it was much more about just like experimenting on making making beats and like writing raps, but like just rapping them to beats that other people made.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but that's still a whole process and like a whole
Yeah.
lot's going on. Was there a lot of other people around you at the time that was inclined to like was also musically inclined, or was it more just like your family?
No, it actually wasn't really much of my family at all. I mean, my brother, he kind of got the bug started in me, but then he just kind of went off to other things. But there was always friends, and it got progressively more serious as I got older. So
Right.
the middle school crew, I mean, that was fun, but like we weren't, doing anything, big. And then high school got a little bit
You
more
guys, so was
serious.
it like? Did you guys have like a battle circuit? Was like ciphers? Like what was happening in the school? Because I've heard a wide range of what
Yeah.
school rapping can be.
So my middle school and high school, it was more of like the school we went to. I was raised in a Catholic family, so I come from a big Catholic family, and so we
Mm,
went to Catholic schools. And so hip hop, there was a segment of the school that was into hip hop, but it was a pretty small. I mean, at that time, like late '90s, almost everyone is not everyone, but a lot of people are listening to hip hop, but very few people are actually rapping. And so there was a small group of us, kind of rapping both in middle school and in high school, but it was a pretty small group. But we were, now like if you say, "Oh, I rap," it's like, okay, well, I've met like 15 other people today that rap.
facts.
But but back
Tell us.
then it was like, "Oh, you rap for us." Like it was like an anomaly back then, It was like, "Ooh, this is something mysterious, something different," because not a lot of people did it. So like we would rap at house parties or some event at school, and like we weren't that good, but we were the only ones doing it. So it's like, "Oh, you guys are awesome," that type of thing. So yeah, so it was just rapping with friends and buddies in middle school and high school, and then when I went to college, again, just rapping with buddies. And then as I got a little bit older and saw other people taking it a little bit more serious, I
Yeah.
also
As you're
did that as well.
describing this, I can picture how people like the free daps became the free daps as they were just rapping with buddies.
Yeah, that's it, man. Just rapping with buddies.
It's so different than other people's like, cause like if you look at something like New York, it's more like you'd be rapping and next man's be like, "Oh, you rap," and now it's on, and like there's so
Right,
many
right.
other
Yeah.
versions of how that can go out that yours is just so pleasant.
Yeah, totally. No, I totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my experience was very different from like the battle scene. Now, when I got out of high school, when I was like, I think I was in college at the time, I did get more into the battle scene at that point. And there was at that point now we're talking like 99, 2000. Now there's a much bigger hip hop scene, in
Right.
Evansville. I'm still in Evansville at this time. There's a much bigger hip hop scene. There's even a battle scene that is kind of like forming and cultivating. And I was not really a part of cultivating it, but I was definitely there, kind of supporting it on. So I did get into that a little bit. I wasn't much of a battler. I got into a few battles, but it
So there's
wasn't
like
a big thing for me.
there's a whole like thriving hip hop scene in front of your face as you're getting into like making music. So you just have all these older artists and stuff around you that you're like able to kind of almost learn from.
Yeah, definitely. And when I was I think, I was still in high school. A buddy of mine and we did a hip hop show on this AM station. You could like barely hear it, but we did it. And then through that, we met some artists out of Indianapolis, which is Evansville and Indianapolis, like 3.5 hours away. And I have family
Okay.
in Indianapolis. So I go up there often as a kid. So there was this cat, Fitty Futuristic was his name. And he really was helpful. And he was a recording artist, in the hip hop world and had recorded some CDs and stuff. And so he really kind of took me under his wing and helped me with recording and taught me things and helped me make better beats. And it was kind of my mentor for several years, which was really cool because he didn't have to do that, but he did. And I appreciate that.
So is there anyone like famous from Evansville like that people would know?
Man, not famous people from Evansville. Don Mattingly, he was a baseball player for the Yankees. He went to my high
Fair.
school actually. Calbert Cheney,
Yeah.
He was I mean, he was in the NBA for many years, but wasn't like he was like a
Mm.
six man, I think. Yeah.
I was just, you know,
Kaz One. I don't know if you've heard the name Kaz One before, but he's a hip hop artist from Evansville.
it's
So
possible. So I don't know. You
yeah,
never know who it
you
is.
never know. You never
It
know.
could be. And then you're educating us still, because now we got to know who Kaz One is.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Look up Kaz One. He's
Because,
super
like, I
dope.
was sitting there going, I don't know that I heard of Evansville really before today. But you're
Yeah,
telling me there was a whole ass hip hop scene in 99, 2000. And sometimes
yeah,
I have these moments where, like, I start to think about all of the pockets, right? Because you only ever
yeah.
hear about New York, Atlanta, Houston, and a few other places, right? I mean,
Right.
LA and whatnot. But then, like, y'all had your stuff too, and I'm sure then Cincinnati would have had its stuff going on too. And I'm sure, like, all of these places all around have these little budding scenes that, like, no one's really heard of,
Yeah,
but still cultivated entire cultures that thrive and exist to this day.
yeah.
And that's a wild thought.
It is a wild thought, and I love it, and I love it. And Cincinnati, especially, Cincinnati has a really rich music scene and hip hop scene. They used to host Scribble Jam.
Right.
For those not familiar, it was a huge hip hop festival. I mean, DJing and b-boying, breakdancing, MC battles, bringing in the best hip hop artists, to perform. Eminem was there and lost in a battle, and that's how dope it was. So yeah, there's a rich
Now,
hip hop
Scribble Jam is
scene.
really cool.
Scribble
Like,
Jam's
anybody
cool.
I've talked to who's been there told me it was like the best way I'm paraphrasing it is was like a summer camp where you would run into every rapper you've ever cared about in the
Yeah,
parking lot
yeah, that's
ciphering.
it. Right. Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And then like just like the music scene, like King Records was here, and like James Brown. I'm not sure if he got a start here, but like this was very instrumental in his career. Cincinnati was, and Common, one of my favorite MCs of all time, isn't from here, but he had roots here, and
Mm.
his summers coming down to Cincinnati were formative in his hip hop career, because he would come down and see cats in Bond Hill. Shout out to Bond Hill. That were rapping, and so that inspired him, to be an MC. So there's a rich history of being an inspiration to many people here in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, I know Cincinnati a little bit more than I know the surrounding areas, but it's just the thought that the areas surrounding it be having all these own little
Yeah,
scenes full of
right,
people that, like, who could have gone to Cincinnati and just switched flags kind of thing, and then nobody would
right,
really know, etc. Especially back then in the pre-Wikipedia era when nothing's documented and
right,
you just have to rely on
totally,
the honor system.
right, right. Yeah, I'm from Cincinnati. Yeah, right.
So that's wild. So you go to college, you study journalism and communications, I think you said, or something
Yeah,
like
it was
that.
a yeah broadcast journalism was my degree. Yeah,
That's to be like a radio journalist or like TV or.
it was that, or just like a reporter, like just for like a news anchor, like kind of all encompassing. And I didn't do any of it. I studied it, got my degree, but then didn't do it.
That's wild. I always wanted
Yeah.
to, like, as like a fallback plan if I was to ever go back to school, it'd be in something like that because that
Yeah,
shit
it's
looks
great.
so
I loved it.
interesting.
I loved it. And I use it. I use a lot of those skills, now, but didn't I didn't go in that path, to become a broadcast journalist or whatever.
No, that's fair. But you still went to school. You got the experiences. Where while you were there, you were still making music, right? Now,
Yeah.
how does it evolve as you're in college now?
Yeah. So it's just getting a little more serious, I'm taking it more seriously. I'm starting to think about, hey, could I make a living off of this? And I'm meeting other people that are a little bit more serious. And my story is well, every story is different, but I really got into the Christian hip hop lane, and I was in that
Mm.
for a long time. And there's some like really great things about being in that lane. There were some really awful things about that lane too, and I got out of it. But there was a lot of good
That's
things. Like
so
there was
interesting.
there was yeah, it is a whole nother conversation. But there was in college, I met some really key people and got connected to like a conference circuit. And so I was able to rap at conferences,
Like the
and that
Christian
was huge.
conferences.
Yeah, these were Christian conferences.
Bro, that's like volume.
And it was cool because, you know, when I was just out of college, I don't know, maybe for a year or two, maybe more, I don't remember. I had moved to Cincinnati. I'd been here for a little bit. I met my man Wonder Brown, who's from a crew called the Scribbling Idiots. If y'all don't know the Scribbling Idiots, Google them. They make dope music. And Wonder Brown and I were kind of like-minded. We started doing some shows together, and we are like, yo, we don't want to just rap on stage. We want to like put on skits and like act and rap and act and like be really engaging with the audience. So long story short, he gets ready to move out to California. He calls me up. He's like, yo, we should go on tour, because he knew I had family out there and he's just going to move out there to stay. He was like, we'll just go on tour. We'll drive out and then we'll do the tour. And then, you can fly home. And I'm like, well, do you know how to book a tour? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, I don't know either. So we were like, all right, great, let's do it. So we figured it out. We did this tour. And a lot of the tour, what was cool, and bringing it back to the Christian hip hop world, is because a lot of like our anchor dates were with like youth groups and churches and different ministries that were not interested in like getting a big name to like draw a bunch of people because they already had a crowd. They were just interested in getting someone of quality, and we convinced them that we were good enough, and they would book us. And so we would go and we would be able to rap for a lot of people that had no idea who we were. And like that wouldn't work like in the bar scene or like the club scene. If you don't, nobody's going to show up for someone they don't know, generally speaking. And so it really worked to our advantage.
We had some really good time. Find those places.
What's that?
When you find those places that just, no matter what, 100 people are there, those are the dreams. Those are the guys who pay you to rap.
Right. And that's kind of what we had, because we would go to these shows where no one knows us. We would get paid. We would sell a lot of CDs and T-shirts and stuff, and there would be people there. It was like just like the perfect scenario for an up and coming artist that's trying to get their name out,
Did you ever get to meet the KJ-52s or the Cross Movements or any of these dudes?
Yes, I met lots of them. I was in this world for a while. KJ-52, I'm sure I met him. I think I met him down in Nashville. I'm pretty sure. But Cross Movement, interesting about Cross Movement. Do you know about Cross Movement? Did you just say Cross Movement?
I did, yeah. So I ended up having a small stint in youth group land, and then
word.
So, like, at a point, they're like, oh, you like rap? Let me introduce you to Cross Movements. Back when they were doing their, like, not as, like, it was, I don't want to call it corny, but some of their stuff was not, like, it was like Canadian TV. Like, you could tell it was not the same. But the bars was good. Like, they did that whole album that was like a court case and a bunch of shit like that. And I was like, wow, they really be going in on, in the 2000s, they got way better, in my opinion, with production. But like in the 90s, but like them, and then there was Grits and a few other ones.
Yeah.
And I was like really into like the vibe of what Christian hip hop was.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Cross Movement, there was one guy in there, Fanatic was his name. And I don't know if you know the story, but he recently left the faith altogether, like denounced it, and came out with this book called Let There Be Gaslight. It's on my list. I need to read it. But it's really interesting to follow his social media, because when you come out of the church and you denounce your faith, it's not like people from that community are like, all right, peace, it's good to have you. Like, they kind of go at you, and there's a lot of like, well, you never were a Christian anyway. And, how can you, and there's a lot of debating and trying to get them back. And I'm praying for you, brother, and all this stuff. So it's been fascinating watching his experience, or at least the parts that he's sharing on social media, about his deconversion, process or whatever. I don't know if that's the right term, but yeah, it's been fascinating.
Interesting term for that.
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah. I did not know, but I would like to read a book based on a guy who used to be in Cross Movements. Because when you said the Christian rap scene, like, look, I was in the church for a hot minute, and I feel like I got shamed out the church because marijuana and sex were interesting to like a 19-year-old me.
Yeah, like, naturally. Yeah.
And yo, shame the fuck out of that shit. Like, don't call yourself a Christian, you embarrassing us, was a direct quote from one person.
Oh wow.
Like,
That's crazy.
so like the rules of being Christian, and then you read the Bible, right? Because you're supposed to read the Bible, and you're like, bro, it ain't saying this in this book. That's not what the book is saying. Y'all are twisting that message, and I feel like, I don't know, I can only imagine what a music industry that really does make money would be like, especially with because what qualifies as Christian.
Right. Yeah, I made some music. I remember I made this demo. I think it was like 5 songs. And some bigwig in the Christian industry, I was able to get it into his hands. He was like, "Well, I just don't think it's Christian enough." I remember that comment. I was like, "All right, this is just absurd to me." It's so absurd. Cause like, how could he? Yeah. So I have lots of problems with it, but I met a lot of great people in that world and had a lot of great experiences, in that world. And and it really formed me in some ways, in some good ways, and it also made me, as I became more reflective of who I am and who I want to be in the world, it helped form me by being able to see what I don't want to be, So I was seeing debates and conversations about things. Like I just got to a point where it's like, I don't really care. I don't care about this dogma anymore. I don't care about the doctrine.
Did they do shit like debate the tribulation and if the church will go through it, and some of these really obscure philosophical topics where you're like, what is the point of this debate?
Yeah, there's all of that stuff. And like, is the world, 8,000 years old, or is it billions, or, there's all these debates. And like, I remember this to this day. There was this moment. I made this album called Beautiful Raw. And I grew up in a Catholic family, and then I started hanging around with these Protestant kids, these non-Catholics. And so what I saw was there was like a lot of issues where like the Catholic side would describe it one way, interpret it one way, and then the Protestant side would interpret it another way. And it would be opposing views, but they both made sense as I heard them from each side. And so I was really trying to figure it out. Like, should I be a Catholic? Should I not be a Catholic? And so I was like going through this whole process of like trying to figure this stuff out and which side is right, which side is wrong. And I made this album putting a lot of this like exploring and asking questions and doubting, called Beautiful Raw. And this guy in the Christian hip hop world got a hold of it, I guess, and listened to it. And we were at this conference. After the conference, we were in this restaurant talking about it. And he's like wanting to debate me and argue with me, and maybe not even argue, but like he just wants to prove his side and how, like, why what something I said was wrong. And I just remember as clear as day thinking, I don't care. I don't care anymore. I don't care about the doctrine. I don't care if you believe this particular thing about God or whoever, or about the church. It's like, I just care about people, and I want to be in community with people and try to be a better person as I hopefully help people in the community I'm with, be better. And so that's just kind of how I've lived my life since then. And it's been beautiful. It's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful
that's a wild
experience.
thought. So like, you're like mad young in college and whatnot, or just past college, and you just break into the Christian tour circuit.
Well, I mean, in high school, I kind of got caught up in the Christian world. And so like I was like being introduced to more and more people in that world. So it wasn't just like overnight.
No, and like high key, if people don't know, like churches got networks for days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I'm sure setting up a tour is like you holler at your peoples, and your peoples have peoples everywhere, and everybody's gonna call in favors for everything, because that's how it all works. And the next thing you know, you're meeting all the people you need to meet.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little more hard. Like, you made it sound real easy, but I definitely think it's easier than like, I think it was easier for me to book that tour than someone that didn't have that network.
Facts.
Because it's, I mean, the normal network of like playing coffee shops and open mics and trying to open up for people, I feel like that's
you're not
harder.
Getting paid. That's what I can say. Getting paid to rap is fucking hard.
Right.
Like, I'm not talking like selling merch. Not getting paid to rap is fucking hard. Especially because like a lot of the city people don't want to fuck with hip hop. Not all hip hop, but not all of it. Like, there's certain hip hop still fuck with a lot. Like, And this is a no disrespecting, but lately, indigenous folk will get a lot of love from the city, a lot more than other kinds of hip hop. And it's just kind of how it's playing out, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not the same grind, but like the Christian groups, it's like a whole other universe.
Yeah.
And you're in a part of the world where it's different. Y'all got like rich Christian universes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yes, definitely. Definitely. And I recommend, any artist that's trying to break into like touring, like think about niche, like think about a niche audience that you can tap into. I know Mega Ran, he got into like the
nerdcore scene.
Yeah, nerdcore scene. Like, I think he raps at like the conferences or whatever. But are there audiences out there already that would naturally want to see you, not because they know you and know your work, but they know that you represent something that they value.
That's a really big knowledge nugget still. I mean, It's a super hard question to answer, but it really does require having principles and a bunch of other things to get to that answer. So it's probably worth investing in.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
Even on like a more corporate front, the basis of branding is still brand identity, which requires having identity.
Right. Yeah, totally. Definitely. I'm my next thing when my kids are older, out the house or, whatever, just older. And I get back because I want to get back to touring because I love touring. So my next idea, unless someone does it before me and just, sweeps up with it, is I want to tour retirement homes all across the country.
Nobody said that to me before in my life.
Because think about this. There more and more people going into retirement homes grew up on hip hop. More and more. That's going to be the case more and more as we get older. And older people, you have a captive audience. They are there. They're not going anywhere. They're in the retirement home. So you got a captive audience. And for the inquisitive minds, you don't just do a show. You put on like a little lecture about hip hop history, and you do a little, where was it started? You talk about the Bronx, all that. And then you put on a little show and then you have some conversation. I think it'd be a great time.
So straight up, Killer Mike did something very similar.
Oh, did he already do it?
Not fully, but he did a show called Trigger Warning with Killer Mike, where I love it. He's one of my like favorite people in this because he will use the most shockingly absurd shit in intelligent ways. So he walked in and did like a remix of one of his tracks. So he's rapping about all of his own shit at these old people, and that part was he really did the lecture thing like that. He did. It was like a one-off, so it was a cool idea. But the other thing is, I was just out in the middle of nowhere, Quebec. And we were the brass band, and they asked me to come freestyle. And the only audience was a bunch of old people at a farmer's market in the middle of some next to a highway shit. It was a vibe. So I just fucking did the hand thing.
Yeah,
they all did it. Yeah. Everybody was down.
There you go.
They're all like 60 plus, bro. Nah, old people fuck with rap now. It's like the in.
Totally.
I don't know when they jumped on board. I don't know, but they're in and they're down.
I remember rapping at churches and older people, and this was like almost 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago. Like older people would come up to me and be like, I don't like rap music, but I like what you did. I was like, well, I did rap music. So I remember back then even thinking like, oh, yeah, this is cool. Elderly people, they can get down for this,
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were in, I was in New York City when the Drake album, the new house music one came out. Dope. And my mans was playing it on his phone as we walked through the subway, and I watched these old people get jiggy to it. Like these old ass tourists were like shaking their hips and stuff. It was wild.
That's right. Hey, shout out to all the people that are up there in age.
Yo, and as Willie's saying, 65-ish to 55, like that's like the age group of the first gen of hip hop.
Right.
So
exactly.
like,
there you go.
It's kind of where it's going now.
That's it. Exactly.
That's a beautiful thing still. So I'm glad that I'm not on the old side, to be honest. I like being in the middle here.
Hey, 10 years, y'all. Catch me at your nearest retirement home. Put on a show.
No, but that's a lit vibe. I'm sure that, especially the private market, oh boy.
That's what I'm saying. They got budgets, Telling you.
They got facilities. They probably have they have that room people will sit in all day anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
What else are you doing?
If you get tired, they got beds. Take a nap after the show. Show and then show you don't have to stay up all night, man. I mean, the show's gonna be at like 4 in the afternoon, right? It's not gonna be like a late night retirement home show.
Bro, you can run like 5 shows a day.
That's what I'm saying, man. You can rack up, man. I'm gonna go to Montreal. I'm gonna do every retirement home in 2 days. It's gonna be great. And I can still do the the club scene and the nights, the bar scene or whatever at night.
That's actually a wild thought. Nobody's ever gone there for me, but Willie, who's watching it, we've been doing some shows and shit. Willie, we got to figure out a way to break the retirement home
scene, man.
Because we got to pave the way for you over here while you work on it in your
That's
side.
That's right. Yeah, there you go. I'll do it in the States. You do it in Canada.
No, Quebec's a special place, sir. It is especially weird because we have language laws and other complications
Okay.
Yeah. So I found out today OtterBox won't deliver to Quebec no more because of our latest law, which changed language restrictions and reinforced this, that, the next thing. I'm pretty sure it's because the word OtterBox isn't French and their packaging isn't French or whatever or some shit. What? So, yeah, it's real shit, bro. Ain't nobody ever talking about Quebec like that.
Can we still ship stuff to you? Like from
the
States?
But you're not. Yeah, it's more. I don't know to the degree of how this law got enforced. I know that. So, but like in a lot of ways, if your packaging isn't in French and you're a big corporation and shit, there may be issues with selling to Quebec.
Huh.
If you do it, nobody fucking cares, to be honest, because you're just kind of like not really gonna get caught. Right. But like at a real level, I don't know. Like I feel like with a book, it's kind of different because it's a book. But like let's say you sold I don't know, like a fucking phone that came with instructions. Those instructions would have to be in French. Or in Quebec, It's a big no-no.
Wow.
Yeah, dead ass.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, bro, it's weird. They just told me I'm a minority, bro. Like, It's the weirdest shit ever because I'm what they call a historic Anglo. And I'm like, that's the weirdest shit ever.
Interesting.
How? But like... Quebec's strange. It's a strange place. Yeah, I'm not really acting like I'm a minority, but my government dead ass made up a term for me.
Wow. Historical Anglo?
Yeah, because I was born here as an English person to a person who both my parents went to English school. So what that means is my kids can go to English school. But let's say you emigrated here. Your kids would actually have to go to French school.
Huh.
Because you're not a historic Anglo. You're just a regular Anglo.
Right. Oh, man. Dang. Regular Anglos, man.
Nah, Quebec's wildly weird. Like, they want your tourism money, but they don't know how to process the language identity.
So, yeah, it's weird. Shout out to Trudeau.
Trudeau. Yeah, he's from here. He's from Montreal. He gets it. More than other people get it. So you do this Christian tour. Do you go like all over, or is it more of a linear tour?
Yeah, no. So we started in Cincinnati. I think that we went up to Indianapolis, Chicago, Kansas City, maybe Denver, Albuquerque. I think. We just like kind of made our way out to
So it's
California.
like you made like a line and you book shit along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
You got there.
Yeah. So we did that. And then Wonder Brown stayed out there like, I don't know, 5-6 months. He was like, I'm moving back. So we're like, well, we know what we got to do. We got to tour back. So I flew out there and we toured back. And then we booked another tour to the East Coast. So that was like Virginia Beach up to like New York, DC and New York City and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And that was our third one. And then I did a fourth one, just myself, and my wife was with me.
Were you guys like just driving together? Like, did you get a van or is it
the first two, he had a car and we just drove his car. And it was a mixture of show. Like we would literally book, like whoever booked us first, like that's where we went. So it took a long time to book these. I mean, I would work on this like months and months and months in advance to, book all this stuff. And so, but we got them all booked. And there was like shows, like one night it could be at a church or a youth group. Next night could be like at someone's house. We did a hookah bar one time. And yeah, so it was just like very random
Hold on,
places.
hookah bar through a Christian rap show?
Yeah, well, we were like we didn't. We were like kind of like we would like meander. Like we could go to like Christian places and we knew the language. You know, we kind of came from that background, but we could also go to hookah bars and rap. Our music wasn't like oversaturated with like religion and like what cross movement was. You know, so like a lot of our music was fun. It was upbeat. It was more just kind of relational, and so like it wasn't anything that would necessarily offend people in the church necessarily. Some people did. But it wasn't something that like people in like a club be like, oh, y'all are corny, you get out of here, that type
Nah,
of thing.
I get what you mean. There's that like honestly, like that Ooh Ah song by Grits.
Yeah, kind
Which
of like Grits. Yeah,
shit got repurposed for days.
yeah. I like that song. I like that song.
But yeah, so like you did that for how many years? Because that sounds like it was a long time.
Yeah, I was in that for a while. The tours, I guess the tours happened in like a 3-year span, and then after I was married and had our first kid, I got 2 kids now. I stopped with the touring. I stopped performing as much just because I wanted to be home more. And so at that point, I kind of slowly started getting out of that scene. Now I was still like, and even to this day, I work for the Episcopal Diocese, so I still work for like a Christian organization. But it's very different who I work for today and what I do today versus what I was doing and who I was working for back then. It's just like night and day difference. But coming out of that like very hyper Christian evangelical world, I started coming out of that, I don't know, 2013, 14, and just kind of slowly kind of walked on out.
So your like music videos and stuff are from like 2012. That's like when you're on like the tail end of your touring run and you're all
Right.
out there running
Yeah.
these songs up.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And even like, so those songs, like, well, a couple of those are pretty gimmicky, especially the one where we get run over at the end. But those songs, like if you listen to the lyrics, it's not anything that's going to fit anyone, I don't think, and it's not something that's like super lame.
No, it totally explains it. It reminds me of like like you guys want to go a little harder, and you're absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like that would be what I felt off of it. Not because it's good. Like it's not, but I feel like there's like you guys have you have bars. I think where you're like, even if I'm not saying anything, I can still rap good. And
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah.
Man's want to be saying shit.
Yeah, we did a lot of rapping just to be rap. And the other thing, like Wonder Brown and I did, is we recorded an album together, and a lot of that album, the thought process was, will this translate to a live audience? Because he and I were the ones out there doing a lot of shows together. And when we recorded our album together, we really try to think through, how is this going to translate? Is this going to be a good live song that we can do?
That is a big that shit changes a lot about, I think, how you write music.
Yeah, totally. And so a lot of those songs, like the song on the actual CD or the album or whatever, it's like, some people like it, but if you hear us perform some of those songs, like it takes on a whole different, like there's one song we have, I think it's called Words. And when you listen to the song, it's like, it's just a song. But when we performed it, we actually had cards, like these big cards with the words we were rapping about on the cards. And like, you'd see the word, we'd rap about it, and then you throw the card down, and then we rap about that word. And so there's like this whole visual presentation to, most of our songs. And it was just a different experience, experiencing the song versus just hearing it.
No, I totally appreciate that. I also just got a shout out, Ayamosmarad.
Ayamosmarad. Heck yeah.
I said that real bad for the follow. That's real dope. And I know you had somebody else in here, if I scroll up, that came through who I meant to like shout out before. Profound MC also came through.
Oh,
so
yes.
I'm gonna give love for that, for the people that pop in and leave the little comments there, because we do see them, even if I don't answer all of them.
Yeah, before we go, we definitely need to talk about Iomos, Murad, and Profound, because they're part of the crew that I run with now, that we're writing the books together and doing everything together now. So
No, it's big lit. I mean, I feel like we still have plenty to talk about, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
also are doing. I'm curious because like writing for live is something I'm going through now. As I write songs, I have to make the decision: is this something I can promote at a live show?
Yeah,
Yes or
yeah.
no? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, maybe we go down the proper song polishing route. No, let's just rap and throw this on what I'm calling a mixtape and run. Because, yo,
There you go.
some of this shit,
Right
you're
on.
like, do I even want to memorize this shit?
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah, totally.
and then, what are some of the. Because, like, yo, live people, like, the audience is different. It's like you might want to rap for, like, a lot of bars, but that might really not be the flex for, like, a live show. In fact, choruses are great and repetition helps.
Yeah, totally. And
But,
like,
like, what are your tips for that?
yeah. So one is like either you have a lot of words and that's like kind of a mesmerizing technique to bring people in, or don't have a lot of words, because I see people get, they're too wordy, and when you're performing, having too many words can be very problematic sometimes. So keeping it simple and dropping out words. I think dropping out the music is very important for doing live shows. So you drop out the snare, drop out the kick, drop out everything for a minute, and like do your punchline or whatever. I think that's that's entertaining to the audience when you do that. I also think like beat
Like,
selection,
kind of like a DJ cutting your shit.
Yep. Like I would edit that in because we didn't have a DJ, so I would edit that stuff in. We would have like the song that we would record for the CD, or for the recording, and then I would do another edit like for the beat for like the performance of it. And I think more than like techniques for a song, I think what my experience taught me was before and after the song or songs was like so important. And what I likened it to was like, like if you're a football fan, you watch the Super Bowl for the Super Bowl, right? Like you get into the game. But if you're not a Super Bowl fan, like if you're not a football fan, you watch the Super Bowl, but you don't really pay attention. You're there for the food, and you get excited about
that guy.
Yeah, and you get excited about commercials, maybe like, oh, this commercial. That's how I used to think about performing for people. Is that most people that showed up were not showing up for me, the football. They were showing up just to have a good, fun night, and they didn't really care about the performers. We were just kind of like the commercials in between, like them chatting and hanging out. So I was like, all right, I need to make my commercials really, really tight. And those were like the skits. So like we would do skits in between the songs to try to pull people in. And so I think how you set up the songs and how you finish them is as important, if not more important, than the actual songs. If you're not,
tell them.
If you're in a scene where they're not there for you, and we were there a lot of times where like people were not showing up.
Everybody's in a scene where nobody's there for them. That's how you start.
Yeah. That's how you start, right? Yeah. So you got, and it's not like, it can feel gimmicky, I think sometimes. And like, I'm a youth, like I work with young people, I work with kids. So like I have a natural inclination to like be silly and do silly things. And I don't mind that. Other people are not like that, but you can still figure out how, in your own context and how you feel confident being yourself, you can still figure out how to set up a song in a way that's going to engage people and invite people in, and not just be like, yo, drop the beat, blah, 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 blah. Nobody's paying attention.
But like,
y'all
even
suck,
to like,
that type of thing.
Like, to me, I like, forget about like on the small end. Look at what the pros do. J. Cole will give you like a 4-minute speech about some shit if he feels like it. I watched Tyler, the Creator's Lollapalooza performance. Bro, that shit is like choreographed to the T, a performance theater mixed in. Then the songs come in. But like there's all this stuff to it where not everybody I know that's doing really, really well with it will like come in and do some. I mean, I guess it's gimmicky, but like gimmicks that make sense is just good branding. Right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's sticky shit. Like I think that like not every time am I gonna put a speech, but there's certain songs and certain moments where it's like you want to create like a segue, tying all the different things together so that like people care more. Cause like you have what 30 seconds max to give them a reason to give a shit about what you're about to do.
Yeah, right. Totally. And it's like you can be like a great MC, a great lyricist, have the dopest bars, like the dopest lyrics, or you can be a really good entertainer, or you can be both, or you can be one or the other. And that's what I realized. Like, they don't really care if I'm a great rapper. They care if I'm a great entertainer. And so I was just like, I'm going to be a really good entertainer because that felt good and natural to me. It didn't feel gimmicky to me to entertain people, because people, like, a lot of times, people come out to a show, they're not there to, like, hear a lecture or have to, like, think hard. Like, they've had a hard day or a hard week or whatever. They're just trying to unwind and relax. And I want to, like, help with that process. I wanted to come in and entertain them, make them laugh a little bit, make them, just a little bit more comfortable than what they were. And so I very quickly realized, like, I really want to be a good entertainer. Like, I want to be a good lyricist and I want to write, good lyrics and good engaging music. But when I'm on stage, none of that stuff really matters too much if you're not a good entertainer, because people aren't going to, unless you're, like, in front of, like, hardcore, straight up heads,
Scribble
like, you
jam.
just gotta, yeah, if
The
you're a
scribble
scribble
jam.
jam, just rap your bars and do, oh, like, that's dope, But if you're just at, just commonplace, just common people, like, you got to entertain, and that's what I learned. And
Yeah, that's a huge lesson. I just want to shout out Joe November for following as well. He came in. I know it took a minute to say thanks for the follow, but I don't want to interrupt. But yeah, no, that's a huge tip, man. Because, honestly, I try to be the most memorable person in a bar if I'm there. So I started wearing brighter pink shit because, like, I take my shirt off mid-set now.
I mean,
it makes sense in the context of everything. And my girlfriend right there, she approves. So
she approves. All right,
she
right
approves.
On.
So
Not
it's like,
man.
like, but it's more like it's all part. Like, my first track's called "Lose Weight" on my set, so, like, it just ties into, like, the preposterous nature of my character and shit. And it's freaking sweaty.
That's great.
Sweaty. I get it. So, like, I just look at it like, nah, these little hooks that you bring in, like, I don't know, I have a song called I Don't Like Pickle Chips, so we bring in a bag of pickle chips and I fucking throw it into the crowd.
Oh, man, I love pickle chips, man. Dang.
That's fair.
I want to be at your show so I can just get some free pickle chips.
Somebody does get them, though. Anybody that's seen that shit remembers that shit.
Yeah, they remember it. Heck yeah.
They might not remember the song, but I get tagged in pickle shit now. Yeah, I get anybody that don't like pickle chips, I totally got you. We got some merch coming. Team No Pickle. Yo, you find out some shit, though. People's divisive. My general theory is 2/3 of people like pickles with all the passion in the world. Yeah. And the other third hate a pickle, but with all the passion. And it's a really polarizing topic.
Yeah, I'm all in for the pickles, man. I think I'm pro pickle. I think cucumbers are the inferior community in that scenario, and they just are waiting to be pickles. I love pickles, man.
They're I like incredible. Cucumbers better. Cucumbers got that neutrality. They make salads a little crunchier in a different way with some texture.
All right, let me ask you this before we get back to something serious. What taste bud wise, do your taste buds enjoy a pickle better or a cucumber?
Cucumber. Really? I don't really like pickles, man. Like, I just, pickles got this, like, flavor and texture I'm not into. It's a combination of it. I'm just not on Team Pickle. And I had an unfortunate moment of biting into a pickle recently, and I was like, because sometimes I didn't know that they put pickles on chicken burgers. I don't know why I didn't know that, but
I'm sorry for your experience. And if you ever need to get rid of pickles, I'm your guy. You can give me your pickles.
I love it. But yeah, so basically, you end up dipping out of the scene because the politics of the scene and how it's stifling your art isn't your favorite, mixed with children.
Yeah, I think I left the scene because it wasn't authentic anymore. It just wasn't me. I didn't want
you were unauthentic to the scene, or that the scene is inherently inauthentic.
Well, maybe both, but like I was not that. Like I was in that scene for a long time. I would say I even identified with it for a long time, but I don't know if it ever really felt natural, like who I was. And I just at a certain point I was like, I don't need to be in this, because it doesn't really feel like this is who I am, And I wasn't mad. I wasn't like, everyone did me wrong. I was just like, it just really isn't me and my style, you know.
Honestly,
So
you kind of
just
sound like
hate it.
pop stars who go indie. That was
Yeah,
the most
yeah,
interesting thing to me
yeah,
about that. Is like, in general, yeah, it sounds like nah, the industry is the industry, no matter what the industry is.
yeah. And it's fine. Like like I said, like I wasn't mad at anyone. Like it is what it is. It wasn't me. So I just kind of slowly walked out. And I still have relationships with people in that scene. But I can't tell you the last time I went to a Christian hip hop event or concert, but
Do you
more
like?
love. Hey, I would love to him,
What do you think about Lecrae?
Yo, look, I find him an interesting figure. I don't follow him like really closely right now. I had the opportunity to go and hang out with his crew at the time. When was this? 2010, 11, 12? I don't know.
So he's like
It was
really, he's already on the come up at this point.
He's on the come up, but like they're like super Christian at this time. This is like the Click. I forget what the name of the group was. It was like the something. He had a crew. And they were in Memphis. And I like what they did. Like they did like this intentional community. Like they were living, a lot of the artists were living in Memphis and they were like an intricate part of the community. And they do like events at like the community center. And they were like actually like developing like positive relationships with people like in that community. So a lot of the work they were doing, I thought was really, really cool. And so I went there and I spent, I don't know, 1 or 2 nights just kind of hanging out. And I remember having a talk with, and I think Lecrae was there in the studio like the first night and he was just talking. But then like maybe the second night, I forget what the guy's name was. He wasn't a rapper. He was like one of like the managers or like the guy that like ran the label or whatever. And I just remember it was like that scene in Los Angeles I was telling you about where I was like, I just don't care. And I remember him like just kind of like drilling things, like trying to convince me of things like doctrine and dogma stuff. And I was just like, I don't care about this,
The
like
116 click.
the 116 click. Cause my mentor was
Thank
like,
you,
yo,
Joe.
yeah, thank you, Joe November. My mentor was like, yo, you can go down, hang out with them and maybe like you can, get down with them. And I just remember leaving that weekend. I was like, I don't like, they're fine. Like no disrespect to them, but I was like, that's not me. I don't want to be in a place where it's like super, super Christian, super, super, like it just felt dogmatic, and I am not a dogmatic person, like really at all, especially when it comes to things like God and spirituality. It's like, I feel like those things are so personal and so like, how can you define those things for everyone? Like this is who God is. And this is how you have to experience it. Like, that just seems absurd to me. And like, I just kept experiencing that over and over again. It's like, this is just not me, So I had to just walk out of that.
No, I appreciate that. Which sounds a lot like what people talk about the modern pop scene and like their feelings towards the vapid nature of a lot of it. And as it is a kind of a dogmatic religion, whichever version of it. And people act like some of these indie underground types are not just a dogmatic pop group. Like I'm saying that you're like Action Bronson, Ritz Tears, and things like that. To me, it doesn't matter who your distribution is with it. At a certain point, some of y'all is just pop. Like, however much you want to spin that. Like, it's not a hate on it. It's not dissing it. Yeah. It's just some of these indie guys be wildly not indie in how they move and operate and the dogmas that they follow is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I mean, if it's good music, it's good music. So
facts.
And in that world, like, like I'm very, and I work in like interfaith spaces too. So like very fascinated with like religion and how people view God and those conversations. I find it fascinating. It's just, I really wish that like, and I can't tell people how to be, but like when people have like a very intimate relationship with their God and like, it's very serious and it's very meaningful to them. Great. Like that's wonderful. Great. That doesn't mean I have to have that, or you have to convince everyone else that they have to have that, like just share your experience, share what you're going through, what you're feeling, what you think, like just share it, and let us have a conversation about it and learn from each other. But so often it was just like this preconceived notion of like what I have and what I know to be true is what you need to have and what you need to be true, what needs to be true for you. And that always just rubbed me the wrong way.
I've definitely encountered that. Honestly, Christian Facebook be like that. Christian Facebook's wild.
Yeah, I don't really dabble too much though.
I mean, what happens is somebody in my life shares something as a joke. So you click back to the source and you land in the middle of some Bible Belt shit. And you're
Oh,
like,
yeah,
oh, this
yeah,
is weird. This is a whole
yeah,
different world of I don't want to use the word hate, but it feels like there's a lot of
yeah.
accidental, like they don't know it because they're on some, like, this is what they know. But man, it feels wildly like what Facebook, it feels like a lot of Christian Facebook was a prediction of what Facebook would become in the modern world of its
Ah,
polarization.
yeah.
Because, like,
Interesting.
I've watched a lot of these church debates. Like, my dad loved to debate weird shit with Christians to a point where he would
Yeah.
get kicked out of church and stuff. Because, yo,
That's
if y'all don't
yeah.
think that happens, that happens. My dad
Yeah, oh
was the
yeah.
black sheep. We got kicked out of church.
Yeah. What kind of church was it? Do you remember what like
So we started with close brethren, where because of some shit my dad did when he was 16, we used to have to
okay.
sit in the back, even when I was born and shit. And my dad sit in the back row and shit. It was wild. They had members. It was the weirdest shit. There was
And they
not
made you
music.
sit in the back, or you just wanted to sit in the back?
No, no, no. My family, we had to sit. My dad was punished, so we sat in the back, bro.
Your dad was punished, and
Dead
punishment
ass.
was sitting in the back of the
Yeah,
church.
no, I thought this was normal shit.
That's
I'm
so
like a
absurd.
kid, right? And then
Yeah,
you
you
grow
know
up
what?
and you're
Yeah,
like, this is some fucking weird shit. You
that's
couldn't wear
interesting.
wedding rings. There was no music. It was all a cappella,
Wow.
dreary death march hymns. Like, I don't know if you know the death march ones where it's
Yeah,
like
it's my favorite
just
stuff, man.
voices. It's just
No, I
like the
don't.
saddest fucking music, bro. Like a bunch of old people singing a cappella at the slowest tempo. Didn't make
Huh.
sense. It was awful. That's what I remember was the awful
Yeah.
hymns. Not that the hymns are bad, because you can repurpose them into alternative
Yeah.
rock. I found out at later churches, but like, yeah, then it was more other brethrens that were less closed brethren and more open brethren, which I found
It's
out
interesting.
means we don't like closed brethren strictness. So instead, we just make up our own rules at every church, and you either
Interesting.
have a preacher or you have a board of elders of some kind. There's usually a lot of bureaucracy and structure to it. Like I kind of like, I don't know. I was young for a lot of it. By the time I'm an
Yeah.
adult, I'm up. But like, I watched how, like, you know, the tithing would pay into systems and shit. But the thing is, I benefited a lot as a young person from
Sure.
this whole exchange, because we did cool shit like mountain
Yeah.
climbing and a bunch of shit as a teen.
Right.
But like, then there was the one church where like they hired the pastor dude. That's some wild shit. Pastors be making hella cash in a society where everybody's
Some do,
poor in their
yeah.
congregation.
Yeah,
I'm
that is
saying,
wild.
and like, I'm just saying, we should. Yo, this guy made bank, and we did not make bank, and we were paying man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there was some weird shit like that, and no disrespect to any of the people, right? Everyone.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is to me, church felt like pick your rule set, because I've seen Anglican, I've seen Catholic, I've
Yeah.
seen there's a denomination. Now there's all the, oh, we don't really care about the formality denominations. And then there's even churches that aren't even about God no more. It's just the spiritualness of church, but all the
Right.
God is gone. So like at a certain point it was weird, but when I was younger it was a lot of that brethren shit, and
Yeah.
a lot of, which was a lot of so because it's almost like politics.
Right.
A lot,
Yeah.
because you have
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the boards and shit, and so
Right.
that's
Yep.
what I remember about church was a lot of politics.
Yeah. Have you found, like, you know, in your own exploring of the world, have you found like a set of values or principles, or like some sort of guiding, like, you know, I don't know about all this other stuff, but I certainly believe this to be true, and like this helps guide me on this
Yeah.
earth.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a mixed mash of a bunch of shit. I believe personally that God has a sense of humor, because if we're made in His image and I have a sense of humor, then the man's has to, or whatever, has to have a sense of humor.
Right. Sure.
So if I'm in charge, I would play a sick ass joke on humanity. I would say there's a million ways to find me, and they're all exclusively true. And I'm God, and I'm omnipresent, so I can do that. And that's how the world plays out. Because, a lot of the religions synergize. And I don't know, I think Calvinists are the ones that pick in predeterminists or whatever.
Oh, right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about that stuff. But, like, to me, it feels like there's a lot of ways to find your way and have your
Yeah.
own personal set of ethics. And if
Sure.
Christianity is fundamentally personal relationships, then there is no objectivity to the interpretation. It's completely subjective.
Right.
So you have to go in the world and create your own ethics, or that's what the book says, at least. It's a
Right, yeah.
personal relationship. Nobody else can define that for you.
Right.
And you talk to God. And so with that, I'm also Jewish, so at a certain point I explored that a bit, and
Yeah.
that shit's ritualism though.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but ritualism is insane.
So your mother was Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay,
I got to do
yeah.
birthright and shit and go see
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Holy Land and like pop into
Oh,
the
cool.
temple. I got to
Yeah.
mosh with a bunch of Hasidic Jews at the Wailing Wall. It was
Oh,
lit.
wow. I bet that was an experience.
It was wild. You don't expect
Yeah.
a mosh pit. When they say praise God and the way they describe it, they didn't tell you it was a mosh pit.
That is wild, man. I never heard that. That's crazy.
I had a great time in Israel. It was
Yeah,
a lit
that's
country.
awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
no.
great. Yeah, I found that, trying to love other people and care about other people, and then also trying to open myself up to allowing other people to love and care me. Those have kind of been my guiding principles, for many years now. And it's been great. It's been
Try
great.
to add value where I go.
Add value, yeah. Yeah, I feel that.
I like the love thing too. I try to love everybody. I'm not always
Yeah.
great at loving everybody.
Yeah,
but I try to love everybody.
It's not always
I
easy,
try to
that's
at
for
least give everybody a chance.
Yeah, that's good.
like-
That's good. Yeah.
But like for me, it's about like having purpose. Like that's just finding
Yeah.
value. So what does that even mean? I don't know. I try to even this to me like there's a purpose to it. We can
Sure.
learn from MC Till's experiences. I did not expect to be going down Christian rap rabbit holes and shit, but that's the thing. It's the first time this has happened. You're episode 160. So
Yeah. Right
so
on.
like it's just we're all better for it. Anybody that's gonna watch this gets to hear all this. So to me, it's like a value to the world. Like it's like a service. So in a sense, the live in service thing I think is one of the most interesting parts of Christianity. Because as an artist, your entire life is to be in service.
Right.
If you really think about it. So
Yeah,
evangelical Christians, honestly, there's a lot that rappers could learn from them.
Yeah.
If you're trying to
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
get your
I feel
shit out there.
Right.
But like
Yeah.
the live in service thing, I like a fun of like you watch at church, right? You do the charity runs, the drives to other countries that may or may not want you, a whole bunch of other stuff that happens. But end of the day, it was always this effort to self-sacrifice for the greater good, and that shit
Right.
really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but like to me, I'm trying to do it reals, not like
Yeah.
but you know what's
Right,
crazy?
sure.
The second you start doing it for real, bureaucracy shows up in your life, and now you're the motherfucker adding the rules, and you're like,
There you
"There's an
go.
irony to this shit."
Yeah.
and I don't like
that
it.
is nice. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Life's funny like this sometimes, Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Definitely have a whole experience with the church, but I didn't realize how much you can make money being a Christian rapper. But I
Yeah.
don't think I
Well,
was
I mean,
a good Christian.
We didn't make a lot of money, but we were not losing money on those tours. So
Bro, that's a win. That's
That
a
is-
huge
oh,
ass win. Ain't
that is a
nobody
win.
not losing money on tours like that.
yeah, man, we had incredible experiences. We were able to like go to both coasts, swim in the ocean, see all these great sights. And when we got home, we got a little bit of money extra left over.
That's wild.
So-
And then, so you have kids and you pull out of all of the touring, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you get smacked with responsibility.
Yep. So this next phase, and this was actually kind of hard to swallow because I love performing and I love traveling, like two of my favorite things to do in the world. And I basically was at a crossroads where I could have kept doing it, but I probably would have been divorced, in a few years after that. And I just felt like, you know what, this is not the right thing. I need to step back and be at home. And that was hard because like it was a part of me. I felt like I had to sacrifice. Well, I did. Like I had to sacrifice a part of me, in that decision. And at some point, a year in, 2 years in, after making that decision, I realized that the other thing that I love, creatively speaking. Another creative outlet for me is making beats. Like that has always been a consistent thing. I've always made beats no matter what, from a very young age with that,
Right.
banged up drum set, right? And so I stumbled upon Patreon and I thought, all right, I'm gonna make beats, and then people can pay me. Like if they want me to make a beat, they can like pay $1 for it. It was just a dumb, absurd idea, but it got the ball rolling.
Bro, that is the best idea you've ever had. Oh my gosh, that's
but it
a
didn't
great
work.
idea.
Like nobody wanted to pay me to make a beat. So anyway, but it got the ball rolling because I came up with that idea and I realized like this idea is terrible. Nobody wants it. And then that idea trickled into something else, and it trickled into something else to where we are now. That was
a good idea.
Yeah, see? Exactly. There you go. There you go. So what it kind of trickled into was something called Everybody's Hip Hop Label. And essentially what it is, it's kind of like a label. I mean, we put out music. We don't put out a lot of music, but we're going to. But the idea is just like everyone's included. Everybody's invited into the conversation. And so we do a lot, like I'm sure you see it. You see a lot of posts online, social media, asking questions, inviting people in, to the conversation. Our Patreon members, they're able to like give ideas and like send us like sample ideas and stuff like that. And then it's like the creative juices just got flowing. And so I thought to myself, I miss the days of like Double XL or the Source magazine where you could open it up and go to the back and find out when the new albums were coming out, like the new release dates for new albums. And then that we kind of transitioned into like online, sites like hiphopsite.com and hip hop blog site or whatever, all these different sites, Hip Hop DX. And you could go there and you could find out like they'd have that one link, like new releases or release dates or whatever. And then that kind of faded out. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to like assemble all these dates of when these new albums are going to come out. And I'll be like the source for like new release dates. And that was a good idea in theory, but I just couldn't get it. Like it wasn't practical. But what I realized was I could just start accumulating a list of albums that were coming out every month. And I could just email people that sign up to the newsletter. I could email those folks the list of boom bap hip hop albums that are coming out every month. So then after like 3 or 4 months, I was like, oh, I got a pretty decent list here. I bet at the end of the year, I could write like an annual book, like a top 100 albums, boom bap hip hop albums of the year. And it'd be like almost like a pamphlet type of thing. And then that snowballed into what we do every year now with these books. And so we write these annual books where we write reviews and retrospective pieces and, the 100 albums from that year that we think are good. And so then that snowballed into another book we wrote about the Native Tongues Review. And so it's just, I don't know, it's just a beautiful thing where I felt like I was sacrificing a big piece of me. And then that sacrifice not only was good for my family, but was also good for like my creative outlet because it morphed into, what I'm working on now with all those guys like Profound that checked in earlier. He's part of the crew that, does it. And Iomas Marad and Joe November. Got to shout out Big Stowe, Michael Stover, and our buddy Bo Brown. So there's 6 of us that kind of make up the team. And we're having a ball, like writing these books, doing the podcast that we do, and just having a really good time doing it together.
So Ismail asked, how are you actually able to rank 100 albums? Because like I seen your book and you really did have 100 of them. I think I saw the 2020 and the 2021 versions of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So his question was, how do I rank them?
Yeah, like how do you get to that order? Because you do have it in order.
We do
generally.
Yeah, and it was actually a mistake. Like I don't remember how the mistake happened, but like the original thinking was like I would rank like the top. Maybe it was the top 50 or maybe even 30. But I was like, I'm not going to rank 100. I'm just going to rank, the top whatever. And then somehow I don't think that got translated to Bo. Bo Brown is our really good friend of mine. He does like all the formatting for like Amazon when we submit the book. But he ranked them. He put numbers by all of them. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess we are going to rank them. And so that was kind of the first year. Like I didn't really have them ranked after a certain number. They were just like, these are all dope. But in subsequent years, I just decided like, I'm just going to rank them. I mean, it's somewhat arbitrary because like some of the albums are like really good and like, music changes over time as
It's
you
like,
experience an album, it gets better. So what I do is I listen to a lot because I love it. I love the music. I'll listen to it. I'll just start ranking them as I'm hearing it. Like, all right, this one might make the top 100, but it'll be down low. This one's super dope. This one's going up here. And then just like every month as I'm listening, I'll be like, nah, I think this album's a little bit better. And I just kind of like, that's basically the process of the 100. So it's not like, it's not a perfect science. But the idea is if you like, my taste in boom bap hip hop, you're probably not going to have the exact same 100, obviously, but you're probably going to like the majority of the albums on there. That's kind of the idea.
and it's a pretty extensive list. Like I don't really do album reviews no more because I mean I should maybe. I think I owe a couple for Patreon, but in general, like I did a lot, like 600 or 500.
Oh,
maybe
wow.
not that many, but it was like hundreds, somewhere between 400 to 500 easily. Full album reviews, track by track breakdowns. So some of the ones you did, I would be like, man, this dude wrote like 3 lines, and I did like a 90-minute video. I motherfuckers was reading his shit, and nobody clicked on my 90-minute video.
Oh, that's funny, man. That's funny. But I mean, the whole idea, like, for
They
me,
were. It was just like it felt like reading like this little like teaser to each of them.
Yeah, and for me, like a big part of the book is like I really want people to go and listen to the music, especially some of the more underground artists. Like, Nas put out an album I think is really great, so it's going to be in there. But, Tab One put out an album that I thought was really great, and you may not have heard of Tab One, but hopefully by writing a review of his album, it'll pique someone's interest and they'll like go and listen to Tab One's album and appreciate it and buy it and start supporting Tab One. So that's a big point of the book is to bring exposure to artists that, may not get as much exposure as we think they should,
No, I appreciate that. You come across some crazy talented people. That's the one thing that really drove me nuts about the old head mentality is I found some seriously innovative artists out there, especially if you leave boom bap. You can find some really experimental shit that is just that doesn't sound like anything in history before as far as hip hop is concerned. And then people will act like there's no originality, and I'm like, you never heard of Lil Darky or any of these other ones that are out there. Why? Because he has a Lil in his name, so they would just ignored it or something. Dude's dropping stuff that's like this explosive fusion of punk and all these other genres mixed together while he scream raps, and it's like it's really lit. It's a vibe. You might not love it, but it's still original. It hits the authenticity and all this other stuff. But like, so like you start to look into it, and then the other thing is how many of like the OGs are still dropping that are on your list when you really go into digging and you're like, wait a second, y'all are like playing his 94 album, but you're not buying his new album.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff happens a lot too. So seeing your shit was like really interesting because it was like a hard culmination of here's 100 albums that existed this year. Stop talking about how this is dead.
Right.
It's all new. That was the biggest statement I got from your book.
Damn, man, I'm glad you got that statement, man. And I don't like complaining either. Like I like, having, like I was saying, like I couldn't find these release dates. And so instead of like saying, nobody's like checking for music anymore, it's like, I'm going to do something about it, and just having that mentality of like, let's just make things, let's stop complaining. Let's make things happen. Like there is dope music coming out. And if you don't think so, or you can't find it, I got a book for you. Like I'm going to make it really easy for you to find this music, And, the other thing about music is like, it's such a, it kind of goes back to religion. Like it's such a spiritual thing. And it like what you like, like if you like the little, what was it? Little Durkee?
Little Darky.
Yeah. If you like that,
a
great.
Wild
like,
character.
If you like nothing but like mid-90s boom bap hip hop, it's fine. It's whatever. Like, but just don't hate on other people or just trash stuff just because you don't like it or whatever. You know, that just seems
Yeah,
weird to
nah.
me.
I mean, I don't fully understand it, but then again, it's one of them generational things, right? Because I
Yeah.
remember when they did it to my you can find articles from the '90s where like the guitarist from Slayer's talking about Limp Bizkit with like the same attitude.
Uh-huh.
You run it back to the '60s,
Yep.
it's the same shit. I'm sure the big band people were mad at them 3-piece acts.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. But I do think a good critique is always welcome though. You know, I
Mm,
think critiquing artists or their lyrics or a culture or a movement or whatever to make it better. I think that's all. I think that's good and healthy. You know, good,
yeah.
serious intellectual critique. But just hating on it because it's different or you don't like it, it's like that seems kind of shallow.
No, I appreciate
You
that
know?
too. I think that at least if you're gonna critique it too, or the one thing I learned is I have to tell people what my preferences are if I'm gonna be out there talking about it, because you might not like my taste, upon which
Right.
don't trust my opinion. But if you fucks with my taste,
Yeah.
I.
Right.
But not everyone likes what you like. But
So
um,
true.
the only problem I have is when like sometimes people mix cultures up with things they don't understand. Like you
Yeah.
might not understand where Freddie Gibbs comes from.
Right.
Maybe you
Yeah.
shouldn't criticize the bars in his life. I mean, that guy's getting into real fights in his real life these days if you follow the news at all.
Yeah.
Pretty sure there's some legitimacy there. So you'll have a lot of people acting like some people on a pretension where they might come from a background more like the environment you did where everybody's nice and
Right.
rapping with buddies, and then they see some more crime oriented stuff or some other things, and then it becomes a judgment of
Mm-hmm.
systems, especially in Canada. You got to understand, like, Canada's like literacy rate is insane. Like almost everybody
Mm.
can read here.
Yeah.
So like they don't understand how like in America that might not be true, or the
Right.
way culture can be so drastically different from state to state to state in terms of
Yeah.
access to information, education, and all that other
Right.
stuff. So you might have people in Memphis spitting what they spitting on some oral lessons for the hood, but that
Right.
don't make nothing to you if you ain't from there, because you
Right.
don't
Yeah.
need that shit. And motherfuckers ain't be reading at the same level, so they can't just go and read the books, or they might not have
Right.
access to YouTube or the
Yeah.
internet, which might sound preposterous, but like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's true.
the
It,
internet isn't widespread like you might think everywhere.
right. And I think a good reasonable critique always includes not just the thing you're critiquing, but like the context of the thing you're critiquing, you
Mm,
know. So if you want to critique, you know, 3 6 Mafia, you got to critique Memphis, and you have to critique, you know, the government of this country, and you have to critique, you know, you have to like broaden it out and put it into context, you know, which a lot of the critiques that were coming out like early on in the 90s where people were just like getting CDs and like steamrolling over them and like burning them. It was like those were not good critiques. You know, those
or
were very shallow critiques
the
in
ones that are like
my opinion.
Eminem is good and everything that's not
Yeah, that's
Eminem is
bad,
bad.
right? Yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
lot
I'm
of
not.
that on YouTube.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
So your books get taught at a collegiate level?
Yeah, man. Isn't that crazy?
That
That's
is
nuts.
crazy.
Yeah, and we got invited. Shout out to Professor Dunn, Stephen Dunn. He was the one. He didn't. I don't even know if he reached out. Like he made a comment on one of our posts about teaching it, and I was like, "What word?" And so we followed up with him, and he actually had us come. It was a online course, this particular one, and he actually had us come to one of the set. It was like on, I think it was on Zoom or one of the similar programs like that, and share with the class about our, you know, our process. And yeah, that was really really cool that he had us come to his college class and was teaching our book in the class. That was kind of a surreal moment.
That is wild. I mean, I
Yeah.
really like your essay parts. The
Oh,
like the
thank you.
longer form parts. To me,
Yeah.
that was super interesting. I don't know if you have more of those. I know you do your
Yeah.
reels and you do your like little album in the cars and whatnot. So I know
Yeah.
you got your
Yeah.
content out there. But
Right.
like those like essay things, I think were really cool. I feel like and all everybody who wrote for them. So it wasn't just like yours per se, but it was an
Right.
interesting way to like see how y'all thought about just music and gave
Yeah.
more like weight to the actual order of it, even if the essay had nothing to do with anything in that year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was, I don't think we had that in the first volume, but we started that in the second volume. And yeah, I really like those pieces because it allows us to, write on anything we want, and we're not like, like you said, we're not like in bondage to the year. And having more people on the writing team now is really, really dope. Like when we started, it was primarily Michael Stover and I, and Bo Brown, I think, did a couple. I think he did one or two for the first book. And then, but since then we've expanded, and Iomas Marad has done a lot. Like he did a lot of writing for our last book, the Native Tongues Review, which was like our annual books, but just, dealing with Native Tongues albums and groups. And having him and Joe November has written some now, and Profound has written some now, just expanding, the voices in the book. I think has been really, I think it's made the books better. Hopefully the readers will agree with me, but it's definitely been more fun writing it, with the team, with a larger team. So
right. And Ismail wants to know, are there going to be any new sections in the volume 4?
Yeah, there. Wait, who was asking? I'm just
Ismail Gadamsi.
Oh yeah. Yes, and I'm waiting on some artists to get their pieces in, but we are going to have. I'm working on this. I'm working on a piece that's like liner notes. So it's like artists writing liner notes for their album that they released that year. Like they used to have, like you tear open the CD or the record or whatever, and there's liner notes, like someone's talking about the music. So I'm working on that for a new piece in the book.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So basically this whole, like, you started the label with the beats via Patreon, and you're producing music now. You've got the books going on now. You're doing a lot of little social media things too to, build it all up. So what's like next in your horizons?
Yeah. Next will be more music. So I will get back into, rhyming at some point. But I'm doing a lot of production. Joe November, who chimed in earlier, he does a lot of beats. Profound, he also does beats. Iomas Marad does beats. Bo Brown does beats. So like our whole crew pretty much makes beats. And pretty much the entire crew rhymes too. I don't think Joe does, but so within the crew, we're going to put out more albums, solo albums, group albums where it's just like two of us, maybe tag teaming, whatever. So we're going to put out a lot more music moving ahead. So the book definitely is going to stay a centerpiece of what we do. We have a podcasting show that we do called the Boom Bap Chat. We're going to continue to do that. And then we're also exploring how many books we do every year. So this year, we're actually putting out 2 books. We already put out the Native Tongues Review, and then Volume 4 comes out in November. And we're trying to think if, like, is that a good rhythm for us? Can we do 2 books a year and make them good? Or do we, just do, 2 books every other year? But the other book, like, we're going to do the annual books. But then the other book that we do like midway through the year is going to be like the Native Tongues Review, where similar setup, but instead of just reviewing a bunch of albums from one year, we're going to review a bunch of albums from one crew. So we're thinking about like Hieroglyphics and like the Boot Camp Click, DITC, groups like that, where we can do a whole book about that, particular crew. So,
right.
And definitely a Native Tongues collective, or Native Tongues Collective Volume 2, because a lot of people were like, yo, what happened to the Beat Nuts? The Beat Nuts is not in the book, and Brand Nubian's not in the book, and all these like native tongue, groups that were not like maybe the primary groups, but they were there or down or whatever. So we definitely need to do a Volume 2 of that book. So that's on the horizon too. Yeah.
Would you ever consider streaming?
Yeah. I mean, so in what context?
Twitch.
Yeah.
Twitch has built-in Patreon. It's pretty lit, actually.
Yeah, I should probably get more into it. Like, we have a Twitch, what do you call it? Stream page? Whatever it's called.
I think it's called
a channel. We have a Twitch channel, and actually our Boom Bap Chat program does go out live on Twitch, but
Oh, that's lit.
I haven't done a lot, to be honest with you, with Twitch yet. So I need to get more into it.
Well, it's fun because you can do shit like make beats
Yeah.
live and monetize your beat making process in theory because you can get tips for making beats. You can do shit like, oh, subscribe to me and I'll flip your sample. And if people subscribe with Amazon Prime for free, you still get $250.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I might have to. Yeah, I definitely. It's on my list to explore.
It's really just good for like if you're already gonna do these things. Like I have a project where I'm trying to document all the English rappers in a city. Why was I just gonna do that research offline? Screw that. We'll do it online. Listen to the music together.
Does it stay up, or does it come like when you do, like what we're doing right now?
This is gonna be out for 60 days on Twitch. You can set that number up to 60, so I leave it at maximum. Then you archive it on YouTube or wherever else. Right. So it's going to end up on YouTube after. But then I'm also going to rip the audio and put it on Podbeam is what I use. So that goes to whatever podcast network. So this will end up on Spotify at some point a week later or whatever. Usually it's
that's
about
dope.
a week.
Yeah, that's dope.
It's weak because I'm lazy, not because it actually takes that long. But it's like, go through the whole thing, set up a cycle, and make sure you can cover your, something. I gave up on committing to weekend things now.
No, I feel you. I feel
you.
You
never know when you're going to be in the middle of nowhere in Quebec.
Right.
But yeah, no. I really appreciate this conversation with you, MC Till. You're a super interesting guy, but really what I wanted to talk to you because, like, looking into you back when Ismail brought you up, you just have a lot of cool community initiatives that are really focused on, like, building up more culture and empowering other people based on history and an understanding of stuff. And I really appreciate that because in this world, not everyone is as focused to kind of having that respect towards what they do. So
yeah,
I think it shines through in your beats. I think it shines through in the passion you bring to it. And man, you really love it, and it shows. You love these albums.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah, just thanks for sharing all that with us and giving us your time and all that. It's really cool of you. I don't know if you have any like closing remarks or anything.
Oh no, thank you, and obviously shout out to the crew, Bo Brown and my man Profound, Iamos Marad, Joe November, Big Stowe, the whole crew. And if y'all don't have the books, man, get them at boombapreview.com. So. And
then also follow the man at MC Till on Instagram. And then the link's right there in the bio, which will bring you there because I know you'll want to click on that Insta quicker. Do that. And then before we go, though, I do want to give a big shout out to all the people watching us live still. Some of these people have been sticking with us the whole time, the whole show, which is dope for me. That's part of Twitch, too. The fact that anybody would stick with you the whole time. And you get the literal validation of a chat of people coming through. And just, being part of the community like that. And then you funnel them into a Discord and hang out with them after if you're being smart. I'm terrible at that shit. But, like, there's a whole like ecosystem to it that's built in. And the shout out to all of y'all watching in the future on the YouTubes or Spotify's, whatever. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and all of that really, really good stuff that you're supposed to do in the world. But yeah, I appreciate all of you out there. I don't really have anything else left to say. I'm going to start this little raid thing and live long and prosper, everyone. And now we wait as the countdown goes and we go take the audience into somebody else's channel and make it wonderful.
Peace.
All right.